Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Ruffman. I am your host, John Ruffman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. My friends, we are at war. Donald Trump has slapped a 25% tariff on imported automobiles. Do you know what that means for you if you buy a new car? And you have to understand, we don't have cars that are fully made in America. We're talking about not only the car, we're talking about the parts in the car. Canada has responded by saying that we, the United States, will feel the pain. But the Canadians went to great lengths to point out it is not pain being caused against Americans. It is because of what Donald Trump has done and is doing. This is a profoundly disturbing moment. And I have a question. Where the heck is Congress? When a tariff is imposed, I have always believed, based on the Hoot-Smalley tariff bill of 1930, that it was Congress that imposed a tariff, and it was Congress that could repeal it, as they did in 1933. But Congress seems to be silent. Will they be silent when the costs for an automobile goes up? Now look, I bought a new car on December 3rd. I bought a new car, and I'm very happy I have it. But would I have purchased a new car if the costs kept going up? And that is precisely what is happening. No, I think it's time for Congress to sit down and discuss if we are at war, and the war is an economic war, should we not be considering the role of Congress in all of this? Now, I want to deal with another subject. I sat and listened yesterday to the House Intelligence Committee hearing dealing with the events of the last few days. It was stunning to me to hear Tulsi Gabbard say the things that she said, denying that what had happened was a major intelligence breach. There is, my friends, something seriously wrong with the way this administration is conducting its intelligence outreach. And I appeal to you, those of you who listen to me who are Trump supporters, and that's fine. I have many Trump supporters, and I'm delighted to have you. How can you agree that this is good for America? I have a very simple observation. Do you doubt for even one moment, if Joe Biden were president of the United States and something like this had happened, that there would not have been an outcry, an overwhelming outcry by Republicans? Of course there would have been. But what do you hear now from the Republicans? A deafening silence. Oh, there are a few who stand up, but not enough. There is something wrong with our intelligence services and the people who are running them. That's really the key, isn't it? I think the intelligence services work pretty well, but it's the people running them that cause me concern. These are not people who I trust. And should the American people trust these people after what has happened in the last few days? And it's just been a few days. The obfuscation, the lack of feeling that something went wrong, the fact that Donald Trump is calling it a witch hunt, a cover-up. Isn't there something wrong here? Don't you agree with me? And now, this morning, yet another word, that in the Department of Health and Human Services, there will be massive cuts. Now, I haven't heard exactly what the cuts are, only that a large number of key people in the Department of Health and Human Services are going to be laid off in an economy move. Can you imagine, my dear friends, if there were another pandemic? Can you imagine if there is an outbreak in this country similar to what we went through with the recent events? Can you imagine the Health and Human Services Department being gutted? Well, by the way, that's not the only department being gutted. Look at FEMA being gutted. Can you imagine if there were a national disaster and FEMA were not up to taking care of what's going on? My goodness, we would be in deep trouble. And I must say very clearly that when I hear about all these cuts and there is no real response as to how to deal with them, I wonder what's going on. And I would be remiss if during this podcast I did not mention the issue of Greenland. Are you aware that Vice President Vance is going to Greenland with his wife. And the threat, of course, is that the United States will seize Greenland. That's right. And look, we're still having Donald Trump talking about Canada being the 51st state, and we're still having the president talking about seizing the Panama Canal. You know, it's a fascinating thing for me because one thing after another. We talked the other day about the fact that the Voice of America is being dismantled, Radio Free Europe vanishing. But are you aware that now the Republicans in Congress are going after PBS and NPR because they would like them dismantled as well? There is something seriously wrong here. And I realize that it is so much all at one time that it is very hard to focus in on one particular issue. But I want to raise one other question with you, and that is the question of ruling by executive order. I believe that ruling by executive order is a disaster for this country. And you have just seen with the president issuing an executive order on the question of federal elections. But you and I know there are no real federal elections. There is a federal election date, but we know it's state by state. But can you imagine a president of the United States now sending a message to the world that American elections are not fair and open and honest? Are we or are we not the leader of the free world? Are we or are we not that shining city on a hill described so vividly by many in our history, including that great Republican president, and he was a Republican president, Ronald Reagan? I cannot imagine what Ronald Reagan must be thinking as this president, who calls himself a Republican, is gutting the idea of free trade, that this president is working now assiduously to restrict Social Security. Can you imagine that we now have Social Security offices closing and people are going to be in desperate need of attention and care? You know, Ronald Reagan was a conservative Republican, and he had his doubts about many issues. But when he talked about Social Security, he said clearly and precisely it saved his parents in their later years. And it was Ronald Reagan who crafted an agreement with Tip O'Neill, which has preserved Social Security to this day. My friends, we are in a desperate moment. Some have asked me whether I believe that American democracy is under attack. The answer is yes. Elon Musk is elected to no position, and yet look at the damage he is doing to our country. Donald Trump was elected by the people, but understand, he is now acting as if he were elected king, not president. And as for the Republicans, where are they? Why are they silent? Fear? Well, you cannot be afraid in a democracy, can you? And I will not even touch the idea at this moment of the arrest which was just made of a student in this country. I have watched the tape and I'm horrified. But we'll be talking more about the question of national security and internal security as time goes on. Clearly, when it comes to civil liberties, Donald Trump is no friend of civil liberties. This administration represents to me a threat to the security not only of the United States, but a threat which is now taking place in the world. Do me a favor today. Read what the Canadians are saying about what has happened. Understand what Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing with Health and Human Services. Understand the nature of the changes in America. Changes, my friends, which are not for the better. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which, of course, is our goal. And, of course, it is important for you to know that you can, and I do read when you offer comments, what you're saying. Go to the various vehicles that we have and let me know what you think. I want to say a special thank you to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program. Gogo, always appreciate everything you do. I am John Rothman. I will be back tomorrow with another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.